Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. It means the world to me. Picture this moment. You're scrolling through your phone at 2 in the morning and each swipe feels like a tiny knife cutting into your self-worth. The influencer's perfect vacation, your colleague's promotion announcement, your friend's engagement photos. Suddenly your life feels small, insufficient, not enough. You close the app, but the damage is done. Your heart races with anxiety, and a familiar voice whispers, "Everyone else has it figured out except you." If this sounds painfully familiar, you're not alone. But here's the truth, nobody's telling you. This comparison trap isn't a personal failing. It's a carefully engineered system designed to keep you chasing an impossible standard. And today, everything changes. Today, you reclaim your power. Chapter 1. The science behind our comparison. Addiction. Before we can break free, we must understand the invisible chains that bind us. The human tendency to compare ourselves to others isn't new. It's been hardwired into our psychology for millennia. But never in human history has this natural instinct been weaponized quite like it is today. In 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger introduced what he called social comparison theory. His groundbreaking research revealed that humans have an innate drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities by comparing themselves to others. This was originally an evolutionary survival mechanism. Our ancestors needed to assess their standing within their tribe to ensure safety and belonging. When resources were scarce, knowing where you ranked could mean the difference between life and death. But here's where things get dangerous. Festinger discovered that we don't just compare, we compare selectively. We engage in what researchers call upward comparison, when we measure ourselves against those we perceive as better off, and downward comparison when we look at those we consider worse off. Neither approach leads to lasting happiness. Think about the last time you scrolled through social media. Did you compare your messy kitchen to your friend's immaculate home? Your regular Tuesday to someone's exotic vacation? Your natural selfie to someone's professionally edited portrait? These upward comparisons trigger a cascade of negative emotions: inadequacy, envy, shame, and anxiety. Research from multiple universities has found alarming patterns. A 2022 study from MIT discovered that college-wide access to Facebook led to a 7% increase in severe depression and a 20% increase in anxiety disorders among students. Even more troubling, these effects intensified the longer students were exposed to the platform. The comparison didn't just make them feel bad momentarily, it fundamentally altered their mental health. Another comprehensive review examining over 16 studies found that social media use is directly correlated with increased symptoms of anxiety and depression. But here's what makes this particularly insidious. The relationship works both ways. People who are already struggling with mental health issues become more vulnerable to comparison, which then worsens their condition, creating a vicious cycle that feels impossible to escape. Young adults spend an average of 2 hours daily on social media platforms, and during that time, they're exposed to what researchers call everyone else's highlight reel. We see carefully curated moments designed to showcase success, beauty, happiness, and achievement. What we don't see are the arguments, the failures, the insecurities, and the ordinary moments that make up the majority of human experience. A groundbreaking study from the University of Cambridge examined adolescents with mental health conditions and discovered something remarkable. Those with anxiety and depression reported social comparison rates twice as high as their peers without mental health challenges. 48%, nearly 1 in 2, engaged in constant comparison online, compared to just 24% of those without diagnosed conditions. But perhaps most telling is research showing that as much as 10% of our daily thoughts involve some form of comparison. That means in a 16-hour waking day, you're spending roughly 96 minutes, over an hour and a half, comparing yourself to others. Imagine what you could do with that time if you redirected it toward your own growth, your own dreams, your own unique journey. The comparison trap extends beyond social media. It infiltrates our workplaces, our family gatherings, our friendship circles, and even our most intimate relationships. We compare salaries, job titles, relationship status, parenting styles, physical appearance, productivity levels, and countless other metrics that supposedly determine our worth. Here's what the research tells us clearly. Basing your self-worth on external comparisons is psychologically harmful. A University of Michigan study found that college students who base their self-worth on external sources, including academic performance, appearance, and approval from others, reported significantly more stress, anger, academic problems, and relationship conflicts than those who didn't. The critical insight here is this: comparison will always let you down, because there will always be someone with more, someone doing better, someone appearing happier. The measuring stick constantly moves, and the finish line perpetually retreats. You're running a race that has no winner, only exhausted participants. Chapter 2. The comparison culture that surrounds us. To truly break free, we must recognize that comparison culture isn't accidental, it's by design. Every notification ping, every like counter, every follower count is intentionally engineered to keep you engaged, comparing, and coming back for more. Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, openly admitted in interviews that the platform was designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities by creating what he called a social validation feedback loop. Every like and comment triggers a dopamine hit, the same neurochemical response activated by gambling, drugs, and other addictive behaviors. The system doesn't want you to feel satisfied. It wants you dependent. Social media platforms use sophisticated algorithms that prioritize content most likely to trigger emotional responses. Guess what generates the strongest emotions? Content that makes you compare yourself unfavorably to others. The algorithm learns what makes you pause, what makes you scroll more, what keeps you engaged, and it feeds you more of exactly that. Think about the design of these platforms. Why do they show you how many people liked someone's post, but don't equally highlight posts with fewer likes? Why do they push aspirational content to the top of your feed? Why do they make it so easy to see exactly who's achieving what? These aren't bugs. They're features designed to maximize your time on the platform by keeping you in a constant state of comparison. The beauty industry thrives on comparison culture, spending billions on advertising designed to make you feel inadequate so you'll buy products promising transformation. The fitness industry does the same, showing you bodies that often result from genetics, professional training, strategic lighting, and digital editing, while suggesting you could achieve the same results with their program. The self-help industry, ironically, can perpetuate comparison by suggesting that you're broken and need fixing. We're bombarded with messages telling us we should be more productive, more successful, more organized, more attractive, more social, more balanced, more mindful, more everything except what we actually are. The goalpost of enough keeps moving, ensuring we always feel we're falling short. Consider how we've outsourced our sense of self-worth to external markers. We've been taught to measure success through job titles, income levels, follower counts, relationship status, home ownership, travel destinations, and material possessions. But who decided these were the metrics that mattered? Who established the timeline for when you should achieve what? Who determined what success looks like? The truth is, we've inherited these standards from a culture that profits from our insecurity. When you feel inadequate, you consume more products, more content, more services promising to bridge the gap between who you are and who you think you should be. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry built on your self-doubt. Comparison culture has also created what psychologist Paul Agnon termed obsessive comparison disorder, a compulsion to compare yourself to others that borders on behavioral addiction. While not an official diagnosis, the phenomenon is real and increasingly common, especially among young adults who have grown up immersed in social media. The constant exposure to curated perfection has distorted our sense of normal. We expect our homes to look magazine-ready, our relationships to be Instagram-worthy, our bodies to meet impossible standards, and our lives to be constantly exciting and envy-inducing. We've forgotten that normal includes mess, struggle, ordinariness, and imperfection. Research shows that this constant comparison doesn't just affect our mood, it alters our behavior in destructive ways. People engaged in chronic comparison report higher rates of lying about their accomplishments, engaging in self-destructive behaviors, developing eating disorders, experiencing relationship problems, and suffering from depression and anxiety. We've also created comparison hierarchies in nearly every domain of life. In parenting, there's pressure to have the most well-adjusted children. In careers, there's pressure to climb the ladder faster. In relationships, there's pressure to have the most romantic partnership. In wellness, there's pressure to be the healthiest version of yourself. The competition never ends because there's always another level, another achievement, another way to fall short. What makes this particularly painful is that we often compare our internal reality, including all our doubts, fears, and struggles, to other people's external appearance. You know your financial stress, relationship challenges, and insecurities, but you only see others' polished exteriors. It's an inherently unfair comparison that guarantees you'll feel inadequate. The comparison culture has become so normalized that we often don't even recognize when we're engaging in it. It feels natural to wonder if you're doing enough, achieving enough, being enough. But these aren't neutral thoughts. They're symptoms of a culture that has taught you that your inherent worth must be earned and proven, rather than simply accepted. Chapter 3. The Hidden Cost of Constant Comparison. Now that we understand the system, let's examine what it's actually costing you. The price of comparison culture extends far beyond momentary feelings of inadequacy. It robs you of something far more precious: your authentic life. First, comparison steals your time. Remember that research showing we spend over an hour daily just thinking comparative thoughts? That's 7 hours per week, over 350 hours per year, the equivalent of almost 45 8-hour workdays. Imagine what you could create, learn, or experience if you reclaimed even half of that time. But it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. When you're comparing, you're not present. You're not fully experiencing your own life because you're too busy evaluating how it measures up to someone else's. You miss the sunset because you're wondering if your vacation is impressive enough. You can't enjoy the meal because you're thinking about whether it's Instagram-worthy. You can't celebrate your promotion because someone else got a bigger one. Comparison destroys gratitude. When you're constantly looking at what others have, you become blind to what you possess. Research consistently shows that gratitude is one of the strongest predictors of happiness and life satisfaction, but comparison and gratitude cannot coexist. They're opposing forces. One focuses on lack, the other on abundance. Your creativity suffers tremendously under the weight of comparison. When you're worried about how your work measures up to others, you play it safe. You copy what's already been done, rather than exploring your unique vision. You edit yourself before you even begin, filtering out anything that might invite judgment. The world loses access to your distinctive perspective because you're too busy trying to replicate someone else's success. Comparison damages your relationships in ways both obvious and subtle. It breeds envy toward people you genuinely care about. You find yourself unable to celebrate your friend's success because it highlights your perceived failure. You avoid people who seem to have it better because their presence makes you feel worse. You surround yourself with people you can feel superior to rather than people who inspire your growth. Even more insidiously, comparison prevents authentic connection. When you're hiding your struggles and only showing your highlights, you can't form genuine bonds. Vulnerability, the foundation of real intimacy, becomes impossible because you're too busy maintaining an image. You end up feeling isolated even when surrounded by people because nobody really knows you. Your mental health pays an enormous price. The research is unambiguous. Chronic comparison is strongly associated with depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, body dissatisfaction, eating disorders, and even suicidal ideation. It creates what psychologists call contingent self-esteem, where your sense of worth depends entirely on external validation and relative achievement. Your self-esteem becomes a ping-pong ball, rising and falling with every comparison. Comparison also generates what's known as the social ratchet effect. Each person's achievement pushes the bar higher for everyone else. Your neighbor's new car motivates someone else to upgrade, which makes you feel like you need to keep up, creating an exhausting cycle of one-upmanship where nobody wins but everyone feels pressured to compete. Perhaps most tragically, comparison disconnects you from your own values and desires. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What should I want?" You pursue goals that aren't actually yours, the prestigious job you don't enjoy, the relationship timeline that doesn't match your readiness, the lifestyle that doesn't align with your values, all because you're chasing someone else's definition of success. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable tension between your actions and your authentic self. You know something feels wrong, but you can't quite identify what. You achieve the goals you set, but the satisfaction rings hollow. You reach milestones that were supposed to make you happy, but instead you just feel empty and exhausted. The financial cost of comparison is staggering. Research shows that when someone in a neighborhood wins the lottery, their neighbors significantly increase their spending on visible purchases like expensive cars, even when they can't afford them. We literally go into debt trying to keep up appearances, sacrificing our financial security for the fleeting comfort of appearing successful. Comparison also makes you risk-averse in destructive ways. You avoid trying new things because you might fail, and failure would confirm your inadequacy. You stick with what's safe and known, even when it's unfulfilling. Because at least you're not falling behind. Your potential remains unexplored, because the risk of comparison outweighs the reward of growth. Your physical health suffers too. The chronic stress of comparison activates your body's stress response systems repeatedly throughout the day. This flood of cortisol and other stress hormones contributes to headaches, digestive problems, sleep disturbances, weakened immune function, and increased risk of chronic diseases. Maybe most heartbreaking of all, comparison robs you of joy in the present moment. You can't fully appreciate what you have because you're too focused on what you lack. Your achievements feel meaningless because someone achieved more. Your possessions feel inadequate because someone has better. Your life feels small because someone's appears larger. The present becomes merely a measuring stick rather than an experience to savor. Chapter 4. Recognizing your comparison patterns. Breaking free begins with awareness. You can't change a pattern you haven't identified. Let's shine a light on the specific ways comparison shows up in your life so you can begin to catch it in real time. Comparison thoughts often disguise themselves as normal internal dialogue, but they have telltale signatures. Listen for phrases like, "They have it so much better than me." "I should be further along by now." "Everyone else seems to have it figured out." "I'm falling behind." "I'm not good enough compared to them." "Why can't I be more like that?" Pay attention to your emotional triggers. Notice when scrolling social media shifts from enjoyment to discomfort. Identify which specific accounts or types of content trigger feelings of inadequacy. Recognize when congratulating someone else's success feels painful. Observe when seeing others' happiness diminishes your own. Comparison has different domains, and you might be more susceptible in some areas than others. Some people constantly compare their appearance, obsessing over weight, clothing, or attractiveness relative to others. Others compare career, achievement, measuring their professional progress against peers. Still others compare relationships, family life, material possessions, social status, intelligence, creativity, or lifestyle. Understanding your specific vulnerability patterns is crucial. Maybe you're fine with others' career success, but devastated by their romantic happiness. Perhaps you can celebrate friends' achievements, but struggle when family members succeed. Identifying these patterns helps you anticipate and interrupt the comparison cycle. Watch for what researchers call compare and despair spirals. These occur when one comparison triggers another, then another, until you've convinced yourself you're failing at everything. You see someone's vacation photos, which makes you think about your finances, which reminds you of your job, which connects to your career path, which links to your education, and suddenly you're questioning every decision you've ever made. Notice your behavioral responses to comparison. Do you overspend to keep up appearances? Do you avoid social situations where you might feel inferior? Do you humble brag to assert your status? Do you dismiss others' achievements to protect your ego? Do you constantly seek reassurance about your worth? Do you hide your struggles to maintain an image? Pay attention to your self-talk after exposure to comparison triggers. Does your inner voice become harsh and critical? Do you engage in catastrophic thinking about your future? Do you make sweeping negative judgments about yourself? This inner critic often emerges immediately after comparison, turning external observation into internal attack. Timing matters too. Notice when you're most vulnerable to comparison. Is it late at night when you're tired? First thing in the morning before you've built momentum? After difficult days when your resilience is low? During periods of transition or uncertainty? Recognizing your vulnerable moments allows you to protect yourself during those times. Consider keeping a comparison journal for 1 week. Each time you catch yourself comparing, write down what triggered the comparison, what specifically you compared, how it made you feel, what thoughts it generated, and how it affected your behavior. This practice builds awareness and often reveals surprising patterns. Many people discover they compare most in areas where they feel insecure or uncertain. If you're confident in your career but insecure about your appearance, you'll likely compare yourself on looks more than professional achievement. This insight points toward deeper work around self-acceptance in those vulnerable areas. Watch for what psychologists call the false consensus effect, the tendency to assume everyone else is doing better than they actually are. We imagine others are happier, more successful, more confident, and more together than reality reflects. This cognitive bias magnifies the pain of comparison because we're comparing ourselves to a fiction. Notice defensive comparisons too, when you put others down to elevate yourself. Thoughts like, at least I'm not as bad as them, or they may have X, but I have Y, still keep you locked in the comparison game. True freedom means releasing the need to rank yourself at all, whether above or below others. Recognize that comparison often masquerades as motivation. You might tell yourself you're comparing to inspire yourself to improve, but research shows this rarely works as intended. Instead of genuine motivation, you typically generate shame, which actually decreases motivation and increases avoidance behaviors. Pay attention to your comparison addiction level. Are you unable to enjoy your own achievements without checking how they stack up? Do you feel compelled to research what others are doing before making decisions? Does your mood heavily depend on how you perceive yourself relative to others? These patterns suggest comparison has become a habitual response rather than an occasional occurrence. Chapter 5. Building your foundation of intrinsic worth. The antidote to comparison culture isn't simply stopping comparison. It's building something stronger underneath. You need an unshakable foundation of self-worth that doesn't depend on how you stack up against others. Let's start with a fundamental truth that our culture obscures. Your worth is intrinsic. You don't earn it through achievement. You don't prove it through success. You don't gain it through approval. You possess it simply because you exist. This isn't a platitude. It's the bedrock of psychological health. Self-worth and self-esteem are related but distinct concepts. Self-esteem fluctuates based on external circumstances, your performance, achievements, and feedback from others. Self-worth, in contrast, represents your core belief in your inherent value as a human being, independent of any external factors. Think of self-worth as the foundation of a house and self-esteem as the weather. The weather changes constantly, sunny, rainy, stormy, calm. But if your foundation is solid, the house stands regardless of weather conditions. Similarly, when your self-worth is strong, your self-esteem can fluctuate with life circumstances without destroying you. Building intrinsic worth requires you to separate your value from your accomplishments. This feels counterintuitive in our achievement-obsessed culture, but it's essential. Your accomplishments are things you've done. They're not who you are. You can fail at a task without being a failure as a person. You can succeed at a goal without being more valuable than before. Start practicing unconditional self-acceptance. This doesn't mean accepting all your behaviors or choices. You can still want to grow and improve. It means accepting your fundamental worthiness while acknowledging imperfections. You're simultaneously worthy exactly as you are and capable of growth. These aren't contradictory positions. Challenge your critical inner voice, that harsh narrator in your head that constantly judges and criticizes. It's not telling you the truth. It's repeating messages you internalized from parents, teachers, peers, and culture. When you notice self-critical thoughts, ask, would I speak to someone I love this way? The answer is almost always no. Practice extending to yourself the same compassion you'd offer others. Develop a values-based identity rather than an achievement-based identity. Instead of defining yourself by what you've accomplished, I'm a successful business person. I'm a homeowner. I'm someone with X degree. Define yourself by your values. I'm someone who values integrity. I'm someone who values creativity. I'm someone who values kindness. Values are stable and internal. Achievements are temporary and external. To identify your core values, ask yourself, what qualities do I admire most in others? What do I want to be remembered for? When have I felt most authentic? What principles am I unwilling to compromise? What brings me genuine fulfillment rather than just temporary satisfaction? Your answers reveal the values that should guide your life rather than comparison to others. Practice self-compassion, which researcher Kristen Neff defines as treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a good friend. This includes 3 components: self-kindness instead of self-judgment, common humanity instead of isolation, recognizing that struggle is part of being human, and mindful awareness instead of over-identification with difficult emotions. Self-compassion isn't self-indulgence or lowering standards. Research shows that self-compassionate people actually have higher motivation because they're not paralyzed by fear of failure. They can acknowledge mistakes and keep moving forward, rather than getting stuck in self-criticism that breeds avoidance. Forgive yourself for past mistakes. Many of us carry shame about decisions we made, opportunities we missed, or ways we fell short. This unprocessed shame makes us vulnerable to comparison because we're trying to compensate for perceived inadequacy. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means releasing yourself from the prison of past errors. To practice self-forgiveness, acknowledge what happened and accept that you can't change it. Reflect on the circumstances that led to the mistake and what you learned from it. Recognize your growth since then. Then explicitly say to yourself, with genuine kindness, I forgive you. This isn't a one-time act, but an ongoing practice whenever old shame surfaces. Develop what psychologists call an internal locus of evaluation, the ability to assess yourself based on your own standards rather than others' opinions. This doesn't mean ignoring all feedback, but it means you're the ultimate authority on your worth. You listen to input, but you decide what's true. Your validation comes primarily from within. Create a personal definition of success that aligns with your values rather than society's metrics. What does a successful life mean to you specifically? Not what should it mean, not what it means to others, but what genuinely matters to you. Your definition might include deep relationships, creative expression, contribution to causes you care about, continuous learning, adventure, or countless other possibilities, none more valid than others. Practice tracking your intrinsic worth moments, times when you feel valuable independent of achievement or approval. Maybe it's when you're gardening, creating art, spending time in nature, helping someone, or simply being present with loved ones. These moments reveal what genuinely fulfills you versus what you think should fulfill you. Build a daily practice of affirmations rooted in truth rather than fantasy. Instead of hollow statements like, "I'm the best," try realistic affirmations. "I'm doing my best with what I know. I'm worthy of love and of belonging. I'm learning and growing. I have unique gifts to offer. I deserve kindness, especially from myself." Recognize that building intrinsic worth is an ongoing practice, not a destination. You won't wake up one day with permanent, unshakable confidence. Instead, you'll develop the ability to reconnect with your worth when comparison threatens to shake it. You'll build resilience, the capacity to return to center after being knocked off balance. Chapter 6. Practical Strategies to Stop Comparing. Now we move into actionable strategies you can implement immediately to disrupt your comparison patterns and reclaim your mental freedom. Strategy 1. Take a social media detox. Start with just 1 week completely away from all social media platforms. Delete the apps from your phone so there's friction between impulse and action. Studies show that even a 7-day break reduces anxiety by 16%, depression by 25%, and insomnia by almost 15%. During your detox, notice what happens. You'll probably experience withdrawal symptoms, boredom, FOMO, restlessness. These uncomfortable feelings are important information. They reveal how dependent you've become on external validation and distraction. Sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it. This builds your capacity to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, which serves you far beyond just social media. Pay attention to what you do with the reclaimed time. Do you fill it with other distractions, or do you allow yourself to be present with your own thoughts and experiences? Many people discover they've been using social media to avoid themselves, to escape difficult emotions, to delay difficult tasks, to disconnect from an unsatisfying reality. Your detox might reveal truths about your life that need addressing. After your detox, if you return to social media, do so with clear boundaries. Limit your time. Studies suggest 30 minutes daily maximum for mental health. Turn off all notifications so you engage intentionally rather than reactively. Unfollow accounts that consistently trigger comparison, regardless of how much you think you should keep up with them. Your mental health matters more than politeness. Curate your feed deliberately. Follow accounts that inspire without inducing inadequacy. People who share struggles alongside successes. Who create content that adds value rather than just displays status. Seek out diverse voices that expand your perspective rather than reinforcing narrow definitions of success or beauty. Strategy 2. Practice gratitude journaling. Each day, write 3 specific things you're grateful for in your own life. The specificity matters. Instead of, "my family," write, "the way my daughter laughed at dinner," or "the supportive text my friend sent." This trains your brain to notice and appreciate your unique blessings, rather than fixating on what you lack. Gratitude rewires your neural pathways. Research shows that consistent gratitude practice increases activity in brain regions associated with dopamine production and emotional regulation. After just 3 weeks of daily gratitude journaling, most people report measurable improvements in happiness and life satisfaction. This isn't toxic positivity. It's deliberately shifting your attention toward what's working alongside acknowledging what isn't. Strategy 3. Compare yourself only to your past self. This is the only fair comparison because you're measuring progress against your actual starting point, circumstances, and resources. Ask yourself, Am I better than I was 6 months ago? A year ago? 5 years ago? What have I learned? How have I grown? What can I do now that I couldn't do before? Create a progress journal where you track your personal evolution. Document skills acquired, challenges overcome, lessons learned, and growth achieved. When comparison thoughts arise, review this journal to remind yourself of your unique journey. You're not in competition with anyone else. You're simply becoming the best version of yourself. Strategy 4. Limit exposure to comparison triggers. This might mean skipping your high school reunion if you know it will trigger comparison anxiety. It might mean taking a different route to work so you don't drive past the house that makes you feel bad about yours. It might mean temporarily distancing from friends who constantly one-up you. Protect your peace even when it feels uncomfortable or unfair. This isn't about avoidance forever. It's about creating space to build strength. Once your foundation is solid, you can navigate these situations without being destabilized. But there's no shame in temporarily protecting yourself while you heal. Strategy 5. Replace comparison thoughts with curiosity. When you catch yourself comparing, interrupt the pattern by getting curious instead of judgmental. Instead of, "They're so much more successful than me," try, I wonder, challenges they faced getting there? Instead of, "I should be further along," ask, what steps could I take next on my unique path? Curiosity shifts you from fixed mindset, "I'm not good enough," to growth mindset, "I can learn and develop." It also reminds you that you're seeing a snapshot, not the full story. Everyone's journey includes struggle you don't see, setbacks they don't share, and advantages they may not acknowledge. Strategy 6. Celebrate others genuinely. This seems counterintuitive, but research shows that authentic celebration of others' success actually increases your own well-being. When you can genuinely feel happy for someone else's achievement, it proves you're not in scarcity mindset. There's enough success, happiness, and good fortune to go around. Their win doesn't require your loss. Practice saying, "That's wonderful," and meaning it. Notice any jealous thoughts that arise, acknowledge them without judgment, and choose celebration anyway. This isn't fake. It's choosing your response rather than being controlled by automatic reactions. Over time, this practice rewires your brain to see others' success as inspiring rather than threatening. Strategy 7. Challenge your assumptions. When you see someone's seemingly perfect life, remind yourself, "I'm comparing my behind the scenes to their highlight reel. I don't know their whole story. Appearances often deceive. Success doesn't equal happiness. They have struggles I can't see. Their path isn't necessarily better, just different." Question the metrics you're using. Who decided that metric matters? Does it align with my actual values? Am I chasing what I genuinely want or what I think I should want? Would achieving this actually make me happier? Or would it just temporarily quiet my insecurity? Strategy 8. Create comparison-free zones. Designate certain times, places, or activities as completely off-limits for comparison thoughts. Maybe during family dinners you commit to being fully present without mental scorekeeping. Maybe during creative work you refuse to think about how your work compares to others. Maybe in nature you simply experience without evaluation. These zones train your brain that not everything requires assessment. You can simply exist, create, and connect without constantly measuring yourself. This is remarkably freeing once you practice it consistently. Strategy 9. Build a support system of authentic relationships. Surround yourself with people who know your whole story, the struggles and the successes, the doubts and the dreams. People you can be real with, who celebrate your victories without making them competitive, who support your goals even when they differ from conventional markers of success. Authentic connection is the antidote to the isolation that comparison breeds. When you have people who love you for who you are rather than what you achieve, their presence reminds you of your intrinsic worth. Invest time in deepening relationships where you can be vulnerable rather than performing. Strategy 10. Practice mindfulness meditation. Even 10 minutes daily of meditation practice strengthens your ability to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. When comparison thoughts arise, you can notice them. There's a comparison thought, without following them down the rabbit hole. This creates space between stimulus and response, giving you choice. Mindfulness also anchors you in the present moment, which is where life actually happens. Comparison pulls you into either the past, regret about where you aren't, or the future, anxiety about where you should be, stealing you from the now. Chapter 7. Discovering and living your unique purpose. Once you've begun breaking free from comparison, space opens for an essential question. What's my unique path? Not what should it be, not what would impress others, but what genuinely calls to me. Your purpose isn't something you find like a treasure waiting to be discovered. It's something you create through self-reflection, experimentation, and alignment with your authentic values. Purpose emerges when you connect your gifts, passions, and values with opportunities to contribute meaningfully. Start by exploring your authentic interests without judgment. What activities make you lose track of time? What topics could you read about for hours? What kind of problems do you naturally notice and want to solve? What brings you joy independent of anyone else's approval? These clues point toward your natural inclinations and strengths. Identify your core values by examining your life experiences. When have you felt most alive and authentic? What was happening? What values were you honoring? Conversely, when have you felt most disconnected from yourself? What values were you violating? Your answers create a values map that can guide decisions and priorities. Your purpose doesn't have to be grand or world-changing to be valid. Purpose simply means living intentionally according to your values and contributing your unique gifts. Maybe your purpose involves raising children with emotional intelligence. Maybe it involves creating art that moves people. Maybe it involves solving technical problems. Maybe it involves building community. There's no hierarchy of worthwhile purposes. Experiment with different paths without immediately committing. Try things you're curious about. Take classes. Volunteer. Start side projects. Have conversations with people doing interesting work. Each experiment provides information about what resonates and what doesn't. You're gathering data, not failing or succeeding. Notice the difference between authentic desires and borrowed desires. Authentic desires arise from within and persist even when nobody's watching. Borrowed desires come from external pressure. They're what you think you should want based on others' expectations or society's values. Borrowed desires bring temporary satisfaction at best because they're not genuinely yours. To distinguish between them, ask, would I still want this if nobody knew about it? Would this matter to me if I couldn't tell anyone or post about it? If I couldn't fail and I couldn't impress anyone, what would I choose? Your answers reveal what you genuinely care about versus what you're performing. Create a personal mission statement, a clear articulation of how you want to live and what you want to contribute. This isn't about your career necessarily, it's about your overall approach to life. What kind of person do you want to be? What impact do you want to have? What matters most to you? Write this down and review it regularly to keep yourself aligned. Your mission might be something like, I want to create environments where people feel safe to be themselves and express their creativity. Or, I want to live simply and sustainably while teaching others to appreciate nature. Or, I want to build systems that solve practical problems and make life easier for others. There's no right answer, only your answer. Set goals that align with your values and purpose rather than comparison. Instead of, I want to make more money than my friends, try, I want to earn enough to support causes I care about and have time freedom. Instead of, I want a body like that influencer, try, I want to be strong enough to enjoy activities I love. The difference is profound. One is reactive, the other is proactive. Break large goals into small, achievable steps that you can track. This creates momentum and allows you to celebrate progress without needing to compare to others. You're competing only with your past self, measuring growth in your own terms. Embrace what makes you different rather than trying to fit a mold. Your quirks, unusual interests, unconventional perspectives, these aren't deficits to overcome. They're the raw material of your unique contribution. The world has enough people trying to be normal. It needs people willing to be themselves. Maybe you're drawn to obscure hobbies nobody understands. Maybe you process information differently than others. Maybe you have an unusual combination of interests and skills. These distinctive elements are your superpower, not your weakness. They allow you to see possibilities and make connections others miss. Cultivate beginner's mind, the ability to approach life with curiosity and openness, rather than assuming you already know. This mindset enables continuous learning and growth. You don't have to have everything figured out. You're allowed to change, evolve, discover new passions, and shift directions. Your path isn't linear, and that's perfectly fine. Find mentors and role models who inspire without inducing inadequacy. Look for people whose journeys resonate with you rather than people you want to copy. Learn from their experiences, values, and approaches, but adapt rather than imitate. You're not trying to become to them. You're becoming more fully yourself. Contribute in ways that feel meaningful to you. Contribution is essential to purpose, but it takes countless forms. You might contribute through your work, your creative expression, your presence in relationships, your volunteer efforts, your mentorship, or simply the way you show up in the world. Find contribution methods that align with your strengths and interests. Remember that your purpose will likely evolve throughout your life. What calls to you at 25 might not at 45 or 65. This isn't failure or inconsistency, it's growth. Allow yourself the freedom to reinvent, redirect, and reimagine your path as you learn more about yourself and the world. Practice trusting your intuition, that quiet inner knowing that often gets drowned out by comparison and should thinking. Your intuition knows what aligns with your authentic self. When you consider a decision, notice how your body responds. Does the possibility create expansion or contraction, excitement or dread? Your physiological response often knows the truth before your mind does. Chapter 8. Embracing your journey. The final piece of breaking free from comparison culture is learning to embrace your journey exactly as it is. Messy, imperfect, unique, and unfolding at its own pace. Understand that everyone's timeline is different. There's no universal schedule for when you should achieve what. Some people find their calling at 20, others at 70. Some marry young, others never. Some have children, others don't. Some build careers steadily, others change directions multiple times. None of these paths is inherently better. They're just different. The timeline anxiety we feel comes from comparison, not reality. Nobody's keeping score except you. You haven't fallen behind because you're not where others are. You're exactly where you are. And that's the only place you could possibly be given your unique combination of circumstances, experiences, and choices. Accept that struggle is part of every journey. Those people who appear to have it all figured out, they're struggling too, just with different challenges, often invisible ones. Success stories almost always omit the years of failure, rejection, doubt, and hardship that preceded triumph. You're seeing the edited version, not the full reality. When you face setbacks, remind yourself, this is data, not destiny. Failure teaches you what doesn't work, bringing you closer to what does. Every successful person has failed repeatedly. They just didn't let failure define them. Your stumbles don't make you inadequate, they make you human. Practice reframing failure as feedback. Instead of, I failed, so I'm a failure, try, this approach didn't work, so I learned something valuable. Instead of, I'm not good enough, ask, what can I learn from this experience? This shift from fixed mindset to growth mindset changes everything. Celebrate your small wins. In our achievement-obsessed culture, we're trained to dismiss minor progress as insignificant. But small wins compound. The daily habit you maintain, the small kindness you offer, the tiny improvement you make, these matter more than grand gestures or dramatic transformations. Create rituals for acknowledging progress. Maybe weekly, review what you accomplished, learned, or experienced. Write it down. Tell someone. Mark it somehow. This trains your brain to recognize progress rather than only noticing gaps. Allow yourself to be a work in progress. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to be the finished product. You're allowed to be simultaneously proud of how far you've come and excited about where you're going. Growth is lifelong, not a destination you reach and then you're done. Embrace imperfection as part of your humanity, not evidence of inadequacy. Perfect doesn't exist outside of editing and curation. Real life includes mistakes, awkward moments, bad days, poor decisions, and countless imperfections. These don't make you less worthy, they make you human. Practice self-compassion, especially during difficult times. When you're struggling, comparison thoughts become louder. That's when you most need to be gentle with yourself. Treat yourself like you'd treat a dear friend going through the same situation, with kindness, encouragement, and patience. Trust the timing of your life. Things happen when they happen for reasons that often only become clear in retrospect. Maybe you needed those years of struggle to develop resilience. Maybe that rejection led you somewhere better. Maybe the delay protected you from something you couldn't see. Trust the process even when you can't see the purpose. Create meaning from your experiences, including painful ones. Suffering becomes more bearable when we can extract wisdom from it. What did this challenge teach you? How did it help you grow? How can you use this experience to help others? Meaning-making transforms pain from pointless to purposeful. Recognize that your journey serves purposes beyond just you. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. When you embrace your unique path, you help dismantle the narrow definitions of success that trap everyone. When you break free from comparison, you become a beacon for others still stuck. Your liberation is inherently connected to collective liberation. Build a life that feels good from the inside, not just looks good from the outside. What brings you genuine peace? What creates real joy? What fills you with authentic pride? These are your guideposts, not how your life appears to others. Internal alignment matters far more than external appearances. Practice presence as a daily discipline. Most of our comparison happens when we're in our heads rather than in our actual experience. When you're fully present, really tasting your food, genuinely listening to someone speak, completely absorbed in an activity, comparison disappears. You're too busy experiencing life to evaluate it. Learn to hold success and struggle simultaneously. Life isn't either/or, it's both and. You can be grateful for what you have and want different things. You can celebrate progress and acknowledge how far you still want to go. You can appreciate your life while working to improve it. These aren't contradictions, they're the complexity of being human. Develop resilience through self-trust. When you know you can handle whatever comes, not because you're invincible, but because you've survived everything so far, comparison loses its power. You stop needing external validation because you trust yourself. You stop fearing judgment because you know your worth isn't up for debate. Finally, remember that breaking free from comparison culture is itself a journey, not a destination. You won't eliminate comparison thoughts entirely. You're human and your brain is wired to compare, but you can change your relationship with those thoughts. You can notice them without believing them, observe them without following them, acknowledge them without letting them control you. Some days you'll feel confident and free. Other days, comparison will sneak back in and make you question everything. That's normal. You're not failing at breaking free from comparison just because comparison still happens. You're succeeding every time you notice it and choose to redirect your attention back to your own path. We've covered enormous ground together. From understanding the psychological and social forces that drive comparison, to recognizing the immense cost it exacts on your life, to building a foundation of intrinsic worth, to implementing practical strategies, to discovering your unique purpose, to embracing your imperfect, beautiful journey. Now comes the most important part: actually doing it. Knowledge without action remains theoretical. You can understand everything we've discussed and still stay trapped if you don't implement what you've learned. So here's your invitation: not to perfection, but to practice. Start small. You don't have to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. Choose one strategy from this audiobook that resonated most strongly. Maybe it's a 7-day social media detox. Maybe it's starting a gratitude journal. Maybe it's unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison. Maybe it's simply catching yourself when comparison thoughts arise and gently redirecting. Commit to that one practice for 30 days. Research shows it takes about a month to establish a new habit. Give yourself that month to experiment, stumble, restart, and gradually build momentum. Track your progress not to judge yourself, but to maintain awareness and accountability. Notice what shifts. Maybe you sleep better without the late-night scroll. Maybe you feel more creative when you're not constantly consuming others' content. Maybe you experience more joy when you're not mentally scorekeeping. Maybe your relationships deepen when you're not competing. Pay attention to these benefits. They're your motivation to continue. Be patient with yourself. Breaking free from comparison culture means undoing years or decades of conditioning. You're fighting against powerful cultural forces and sophisticated technological manipulation. You're reprogramming neural pathways that have been reinforced thousands of times. This takes time. Be gentle with your process. Find your people. Connect with others who are also working to break free from comparison. Share struggles and victories. Support each other's unique journeys. Remind each other of your inherent worth. This work is easier and more effective with community. Remember your why. Why does breaking free from comparison matter to you? Maybe you want more peace. Maybe you're exhausted from constantly feeling inadequate. Maybe you want to model healthy self-worth for your children. Maybe you simply want to enjoy your life instead of constantly evaluating it. Keep your why visible and return to it when motivation wanes. Celebrate your courage. Choosing to break free from comparison culture is a radical act in a world that profits from your insecurity. You're bucking enormous pressure to conform, compete, and compare. You're claiming your right to define success on your own terms. You're asserting that your worth isn't dependent on where you rank. This takes tremendous courage. Acknowledge that. Understand that you will have setbacks. There will be days when comparison overwhelms you again. When you find yourself spiraling through social media at 3 in the morning, hating yourself for not measuring up. When jealousy consumes you. When you feel left behind. These moments don't erase your progress. They're part of the process. When setbacks happen, practice self-compassion. Notice what triggered the relapse without judgment. Acknowledge the painful feelings without letting them define you. Recommit to your practices without shame. Start again, as many times as necessary. Freedom isn't the absence of comparison. It's the ability to return to center after comparison pulls you off course. Keep in mind that your liberation inspires others. Every time you choose authenticity over performance, you give someone else permission to do the same. Every time you celebrate your unique path, you challenge the narrow definitions that constrain everyone. Every time you break free from comparison, you weaken its grip on the collective consciousness. Imagine a world where everyone embraced their unique journey without constantly measuring themselves against others. Where people celebrated diversity of paths rather than competing over a single definition of success. Where worth was inherent rather than earned. Where authenticity mattered more than appearances. Where connection replaced comparison. That world becomes more possible every you chooses freedom. You are not behind. You are not lacking. You are not inadequate. You are exactly where you are. And that is enough. Your journey is yours alone, incomparable, irreplaceable, and invaluable. The metrics that say otherwise are arbitrary and toxic. You don't have to believe them anymore. Your life doesn't need to look a certain way to matter. You don't need to achieve specific milestones by particular ages to be worthy. You don't need to impress anyone or prove anything to deserve love, belonging, and respect, especially from yourself. The most radical thing you can do in our comparison-obsessed culture is to be genuinely, unapologetically yourself. To pursue what matters to you rather than what impresses others. To measure success by your own values rather than external metrics. To appreciate your unique gifts instead of fixating on perceived deficits. This is your one precious life. Don't waste it trying to live someone else's. Don't sacrifice your authentic path chasing someone else's definition of success. Don't trade your unique purpose for a generic template that fits everyone but fulfills no one. Break free. Stop comparing. Start living your unique journey. The path ahead won't always be easy, but it will be yours, and that makes it worth every challenging step. Your unique journey starts now, right now, with this very moment, with the choice to see yourself with compassionate eyes, with the decision to redirect comparison thoughts back to your own path, with the commitment to build a life that feels good from the inside, not just looks good from the outside. You have everything you need to begin. You don't need more preparation, more confidence, more resources, or more time. You just need to start, imperfectly and bravely, right where you are. So start, and know that somewhere in the world, someone else is starting too. We're all walking each other home from the prison of comparison, one courageous step at a time. Welcome to your freedom.